The biggest hurdle you're going to face as a house flipper and a real estate investor is dealing with the rehabs, therefore contractors. But the problem is that the advice that you're going to get is from people who are doing dozens of projects. And that means that they have something to offer that you simply don't. And that's endless work. So how do you compete with people who have something to offer that you don't? Well, after managing hundreds of contractors and actually being a contractor myself for the last decade, I know that there are 3 advanced tactics that are going to help you make sure you get the right prices on bids, that you're going to avoid the contractor's black hole. That's where they get started on a project and they never finish it. And finally, you're going to get the results that you were looking for on your project. And the first tactic is the cheapest trick that is going to get you better bids instantaneously. And I call it pre-contracting. So I was in Walmart the other day. I go shopping every Sunday. And a guy's checking out. He's wearing a suit. And when he checks out, he walks out the front door. Nobody checks his receipt. And here's me, got a hole in my sweatshirt. I got Crocs on, and I have a tub in my cart because for efficiency, I put the groceries in the tub instead of in bags. That way I can carry them to the truck and then into the car. It's pretty simple. But not only do I get checked by 2 receipt people on the way out, I also have a manager who's coming by and he's checking my tub. Now, what's different between me and the guy in the suit? Well, the guy in the suit has a filter on. He has changed the perception that people have of him. And that's exactly what you need to do when you're bringing contractors onto your job to bid it. Because you're competing with people who have something to offer that you don't. Either these people who have dozens of projects, endless work, so even if the contractor doesn't like the job, he knows that at least it's going to continue to put food on his plate. And then new builders. New building is just way easier work for contractors to do. And so they'd much prefer to do that than these projects that we're buying that seemingly have no end. It might be a can of worms. They're fearful that they're gonna bid the job and then more stuff's gonna keep coming up and they're gonna end up underwater on it. And they don't know you well enough to know that maybe you'll take care of them in a situation where unforeseen circumstances come up. So how do you help the contractor share the vision that you have? How do you alleviate the fear? And there's really 3 things that I do. Number 1 is simple. I clean. I make sure that that job site is not a junk mess. I have somebody come in and junk it out beforehand, a different contractor, or I do it myself. And sometimes when I'm talking about myself, I mean, I have an internal crew who's gonna go in there and clean it up, get all the junk out of there. They're gonna sweep it up a little bit. They're gonna make it look as nice as it can. Now, the whole goal here is to get a better bid on the front end. So you don't wanna go overboard and spend a bunch of money on this clean out. Now, number 2 is we're going to take the scary out. Guys, I have terrible handwriting. That's why I write some of this stuff beforehand. But we're gonna take the scary out. What do I mean by that? A lot of these houses are gonna have holes in the wall, holes in the floor, holes in the ceiling. Holes are scary. Holes are a note to everybody that somebody messed this house up. Does that mean I'm gonna go patch all the holes in the drywall just to have drywall cut open later? No, not at all. But there's a big difference between a hole and a cutout. So instead of having the hole in the wall, I'm gonna make a square cut where that drywall was busted open. And I might make a square cut in the floor or in the ceiling. Or if there is the opportunity to actually patch some of that stuff up, if it really is just a cosmetic flip, I might actually have a contractor come in and fix those things before I go bid this out to the main contractor that I'm gonna have do all of the work. Because if I take the fear out of it, the fear that this is gonna be a seemingly endless job where stuff's gonna keep coming up and they're gonna keep having to eat it. Well, if I can take that fear out, that means that I'm not gonna have the fear tax on the bid that I get from them. And number 3 is simply the smell. Smells go a long way, and these job sites sometimes reek. Maybe of pets, maybe of smoke, maybe of whatever smells come up. But there is a thing called an ozone machine. I'm not sure exactly the science behind how it works. Somehow it takes the stench out of the air. It's such a strong machine that you actually can't be in the house when it's going on. You have to leave it in there for a couple days, then you come back, and seriously, it works like a charm. But you do those 3 things before you get a bid, and your bids are gonna be way better right from the start, and contractors are gonna be less fearful because, once again, you, as the real estate investor, as the house flipper, you need to have the vision, and you need to be able to communicate that accordingly, but other people don't necessarily have the same vision. So their vision is terrifying, quite possibly, and you want to take that out. Because the reality is contractors do have other options, and some of those options do seem better. So you need to make your option level up. Now, let's talk about an even cheaper trick. And this is the #1 contractor app. When I was starting out in this business, I, maybe like you, was in love with all the different software options there were, all the different apps that you could get bids, you could connect them with your QuickBooks, there's communication in there, there's everything you could possibly want. In fact, at one point, I even built custom apps for our team that fit perfectly to our model. And here's the issue, is that I spent more of my time trying to manage, to convince the contractors that we were hiring to use the app so I could have this perfect system. Then I actually used bandwidth to manage them to do what I really needed them to do, which was to give me the result I wanted in the rehab. And finally, the reality dawned on me that water is always going to move into the path of least resistance. And the same works for people. And so I had to think, instead of trying to force these guys to use the app that I wanted them to use, what is an app that they're already using? One that could flow like water. And it's pretty simple. That app, everybody's got it on their phone. I can't even read that, but that says text messaging. Everybody uses text. And I encourage you to use that as well. Don't try to get them to send you bids in certain ways and to communicate with you on your special app. Text message them. And when you get a bid from them, it's okay if they text you the prices. Guys, we're not in commercial work here. We're not doing new building. We are not going to deal with contractors who have an admin team that deals with that stuff. And honestly, you don't want those because you pay for that admin team. The guys that are doing the commercial work like that are a different breed of contractor. Not saying better, not saying worse. I'm saying they're different. So if these guys, who more than likely are out on the job sites working themselves, have all kinds of administrative strain that you're putting on them, they're gonna go where the job's easier, where people aren't requiring that from them. And I hear all the gurus out there that have special contracts and special paperwork that they're gonna make contractors sign. Guys, the ones that you're dealing with are not gonna wanna do that. And maybe they'll do it. Maybe you can force them to do it, but I believe that you only have so much management capital, so much pressure that you can put on people in certain ways. And I want to preserve all of that to manage them to do the job that I want on the project, on the house that I'm trying to flip, not on the software, not on all the admin crap. I want them to deliver a great result on that rehab. And that leads me to the third tactic. And this is true leadership. What separates you becoming the leader that folks choose to follow versus the micromanager that people run away from? And years ago, I finally got fed up with being taken advantage of by contractors, by the contractor's black hole, by contractors telling me they were going to do something and then never quite finishing it. So I ended up cleaning up everybody's mess. I'd get out on the job site and finish what they didn't finish just so I could get the next contractor in. Or I'd have to go hire a handyman after everything was done to clean up everybody's mess. And I got tired of that crap. And so I decided that I was never going to do it again. That I was going to manage these guys so hard that I was going to get exactly what I wanted every single time. And I did it successfully. But here's the problem. I was driving around to job sites every day, breathing down everybody's neck, and I had no time for anything else. And not only that, it kind of changed my attitude. I was in the mentality all the time to be up people's you-know-whats, and that kind of carries over from your work life to your life, your home life. And you definitely don't want that. You want to be in the situation where everybody's aligned. And that micromanagement method, even though it might get results, it certainly doesn't make any friends. And here's the other side effect of it is what you end up doing is recruiting new contractors all the time because nobody wants to work with you in the long term. Remember, if we rewind back to earlier, we were talking about how we are competing with other people who might have better jobs than us. And so we have to make people want to come work with us. And so how do you, without getting walked on, get the result you want, get the finished product you want without being a micromanager? And it's very simple. It comes down to setting perfect expectations. And guys, I've been in business for a long time now, and I know that the hardest thing to do is to communicate. Because what I think I'm saying to you is not what you're hearing. And so what I've found, the best way to set clear, detailed expectations is threefold. You don't just talk to somebody. You don't just write it down. You do it all. So first, I'm gonna go out to the job site with these guys with a pre-written, oh my gosh, my handwriting, scope of work. Because it's on me as the investor, as the home flipper, to write a scope of work. That is me casting my vision on what I see that project taking to complete. And sure, you're gonna get some help from the contractor because you don't have to be the expert, but you have to know what you see at the end of that project. So you're gonna make a written scope of work, and each time you write a scope of work, you're gonna get better and better and better. And now you're gonna meet that contractor at the job site, and you're gonna do a verbal. You're gonna explain your vision, and you're gonna show them what you have in your scope of work, and you're gonna walk the project with them and ask them what they think, get their advice, and based upon that, you'll probably revise your written scope of work. So at this point, after you've walked the site with this contractor and gotten their advice and made whatever changes you need, you now have your written scope of work, you have your verbal, you've spoken with them, communicating your vision, and finally, this is the special sauce, your media, which really comes down to a video. I always have my GoPro, maybe my iPhone, whatever. There's a million ways to take a video these days. And you are literally gonna take a video with that contractor in it and just let them know, hey man, this is for both of us. So that way, what we talked about here today, you'll have a copy of it, I'll have a copy of it. We know what we agreed upon. That way, always take it on yourself. That way, when you get done and you're wanting some money for this, you can look back at this video and say, yo man, you said that's what you wanted. That's what I did, now pay me. And obviously, it's also for you to know that you set the correct expectations, and there's nobody that can say anything different because you have it documented on a video. So you're gonna walk through that and you're gonna talk about exactly what you talked about in that scope of work and make sure that you agree totally. As I'm walking with the video, I'm saying, hey man, that's exactly how you see it, right? It's gonna look like this when it's all done. Cool. All right, now you have the video, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna ask them to give you a bid for the scope of work that you talked about and a pay schedule, because maybe they're doing $40,000 worth of work for you. You can't expect that contractor to wait until they've done all the work to get $40,000. They're playing bank for you, and you can't expect that from them. So they might have checkpoints. When I get done with A, B, and C, I want $5,000. And when I get done with D, E, and F, I want another $7,000. But make sure that you write out exactly what A, B, and C, and D, E, and F is. So that way they can say, hey, I want that $5,000. Here's A, B, and C. And we're gonna put that in the video. And it's gonna be written. And we're gonna talk about it. All three, every time. P.S. You're never paying until A, B, and C is done. Remember, we're never paying in advance. The paycheck is the strength to get done what you need done, to get the expectations met. Now, if you've done all of those things, what is the difference between leadership and micromanagement? It is the setting of expectations. Now, when you come to go inspect the work because they've asked for payment for A, B, and C, well, you have a video saying exactly what you expected and they agreed upon. And if they haven't done that, it's not being a micromanager to say, hey man, I'm sorry, but I can't pay you until you do what we agreed upon. Remember, here's the video of us agreeing on those things. If they haven't done those things, it is on them, not on you. So make sure that without a shadow of a doubt, you have set the expectations clearly in stone and it can't be refuted. Not because you're trying to get them, but because you might forget as well. And you want to make dang sure that if you're going to hold ruthless accountability, that you've set clear, concise expectations. And here's the thing. When you've done all that, you're going to send the video, the written, you're going to send that in a text message and ask them to send their bid right back via text. Now, some of them may do email. Some of them may even have more advanced systems, and that's okay. But you would accept text message because everything you need is right there. What you agreed upon, how much it's going to cost, and what their pay schedule is. That's good enough, guys. Now, here's the thing. When you go to hold accountability and you've set expectations like that, it shockingly does just the opposite of what you might think. You actually build relationship capital by being a person of your word, by saying, hey, we said these things, and that's what I'm going to hold you accountable to. It doesn't actually destroy your relationship capital, and that's really what it's all about. You see, I used to run through a lot of contractors. I never worked with the same one more than a couple times because I was a terrible manager, because I wasn't setting expectations correctly. But when you continually build relationship capital with these guys, work with the same ones over and over and over again, they start to learn your ways. They start to learn what you like on projects. They start to learn the way that you work, and you learn the way that they work. And then it takes way less bandwidth, way less managerial output to get the same results. And that's really what you're looking for, because the whole point of flipping houses and investing in real estate is so you can build long-term passive income and wealth. It's not very passive if you constantly have to be in the mix with your foot on the gas. And that's why you really need to focus on building relationship capital, because what you're trying to do here is really take control of your financial future. You don't want to rely on some job where you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. When you learn these skills, you are in absolute control of your destiny. And that's really what I want for you. And I think that all starts with building great relationships with the vendors that you work with. And beyond the financial gains that you're going to get from this, there's an intrinsic value of working with some of the best people out there, small business owners who are really trying to make it. You can be the guy that gives good jobs to good people, and there's no better feeling than that. And so I actually made a video on the 3 things that beginner flippers really need to learn to make this business take off for them. And so I hope I find you there. Have a good night, guys.